Every few years, a wave of indignation sweeps over the male rank as a result of this expensive fostering of the female craze for consumption. They have been blinded by the stereotyped image of a woman as victim of male exploitation to such an extent that they do not realize that they themselves are, in fact, the sufferers. Every few years, men have a wave of indignation. So does that mean every few years men start to go, hey, wait a minute. I think we're getting pulled one over on us. What's going on? And they start to stand up for themselves. But I guess that just falls by the wayside. Hi, welcome to Far From Eden. This is, I believe, our 16th installment of our series on this book. Try my best not to say the name of the book or the name of the author. Oh my gosh. I don't know why Siri woke up. That was weird. That's really weird. I didn't say anything. Okay. A couple of you guys have been saying that when you look this book up, your computer does weird things. That just happened. That's never happened to me before. Anyway, I try not to show, or try not to say, the name of the book or the author, because I would like YouTube to recommend this to people so they can learn. Recommend it to men. Also, some women have found us on this series, and one wasn't happy. A couple are actually pretty supportive. So I think a lot of women are out there who don't realize the situation of what's going on with men and how they're being used, abused, and maybe even how they might have done it. So that little bit that I read just now is in my perusal of this chapter. I picked up and I thought, well, isn't that funny that every few years a wave of indignation comes over the men and they start to speak up. I don't think what's going on now is a tiny little wave. This is like, it's more than a tsunami. It's like the men are like, we'll drain the ocean. I don't blame them one bit. So, as I said, this chapter is called Self-Conditioning. Goodness gracious. If you're new here and this is your first time, it's really fine. You will catch up. You'll get the idea of it. But I would encourage you to go back and look at the others because there's so much insight from this book that was written in 1971. It's fascinating to see how Ms. Villar saw the world, how she totally saw, I guess you could say she saw what was coming by the things she was saying. Not that many people could see the Matrix back then. So the ideal of any trainer would be to bring an animal to a level where it is capable of training itself. As a former horse trainer, I can tell you that's true, because what you do is you actually are able to teach the horse a concept. Then when they're in another situation, you hope they will then apply that concept in that situation. So you don't even have to be there or tell them. They will automatically go back to their conditioning because now that's where they're comfortable. Because as their trainer, you've taught them that that's where they're comfortable. This is heart-wrenching to me reading this as a person who did train animals. And I'm like, God, these women are training people. The men, they're absolutely doing it. And as I've said in previous videos, I have been in casual circles with women and they're joking about, oh, my husband's well-trained or he's not trained yet. Or this is something which still has to be achieved. But man is not an animal. And there comes a point when he does not continue his own training because he is much more intelligent than his female trainer. This will work only as long as he never forgets the purpose of his education and keeps both reward and punishment in mind at all times. The world of pop songs is one example of man's efforts at self-manipulation. The best example of self-conditioning, however, is to be found in the advertising industry. In advertising, man does not idealize woman from any masochist tendency. It is purely a question of survival. Only his exploiters, women, have sufficient time and money to buy and consume all his products. Yes. And it's funny because 1971 is before the time that the feminists say women had access to money. But apparently, they were the consumers even back then, still are today. It seems like they got a lot of power with money. Maybe a little too much if you ask me. I don't think we are the wisest with it, and I think the proof is in the pudding for that. To supply the woman inhabiting his ranch house with purchasing power, he has no choice but to cultivate legions of other women who have as much satisfaction as his own wife in spending. Interesting. They will then buy his goods and keep his wife in pocket money. This is the beginning of a vicious circle which turns faster and faster until he cannot keep up with it anymore and someone else has to take over. There is no getting off and running away. Yeah, there's not. Men don't have that option. Market Research Institutes investigate what they like to call subliminal female stimuli. The conscious ones have long since been satisfied, and then sell their discoveries to manufacturers. You know, Miss Vilar is a lot of things. She's forthright, she's analytical, she's quite secular. I don't find her to be a liar at all. I think she's quite the opposite. And so when she says Market Research Institutes investigate subliminal female, I think that's true. And women just have no idea. And if anything, they've only gotten better at targeting women and what will motivate them. And then you think it's not just commercials anymore, right? They put it in movies, shows, social media to influence the mind of a woman. Because especially, well, even back then, and I would say before that, the woman has such influence over the man. And I've been saying the state wants control over everything in society. The overlords want to do what they want to do. And historically, the people that would stop them are men. But if the men are completely subjugated to women and the women are subjugated to the overlords, then the men are subjugated to the overlords. Just like in the Garden of Eden, if the devil can't get to Adam, but he can get to Eve, and Eve can get to Adam, that's how you get Adam. And I don't think it's any different right now. I think the players are different, but the concept is the same. Boy, every time we read a chapter, we read from this book, my mind just like, it's all right here. Things that I've observed, things that I intuitively think are true, like that they're tailoring these, ads and things like that to women to get to the men. I'm like, she's saying it right here in 1971, no less, 53 years ago. I forgot to turn off the heater. Hold on one second. I knew there was something. There we go. All right. It's fine. It wouldn't be a show if I didn't do something like that or something technical or, The latter then hurry to fill these so-called gaps in the consumer market as if there were, in fact, such things. Or sometimes they work in reverse. The producer invents a new article which he believes might appeal to women and then hires an advertising agency to create the necessary consumer interest. Exactly. They're not selling us stuff that we need or want. They're creating a need and want in us and then selling the stuff. But guess who that works better on? That's why the serpent approached Eve. He knew who his spiel would appeal to, who it would work on. It's not different. It's nothing new under the sun. Sometimes with success, sometimes without. The American craze for prefabricated houses, for example, has not caught on to a large extent in any of the European countries. Every few years, a wave of indignation sweeps over the male ranks as a result of the expensive fostering of the female craze for consumption. They have been blinded by the stereotyped image of woman as victim and of male exploitation to such an extent that they do not realize that they themselves are, in fact, the sufferers. I think that's true so much. It's so true for so many men right now. There's always people in the comments and in my emails that this is all new information to them. They thought their experience was a one-off. They didn't realize how widespread it is, or they didn't realize, the origins of it. And they find this channel and then they learn it. And a lot of them are then making the decision to not continue to try to date because it's too dangerous out there. And that's my whole goal, is to teach men and protect them and let them know, please don't take all accountability for all of it. Don't think, well, if I was a better husband, then, things would have gone better. I'd say that's probably not true. It's probably not. Stop beating yourselves up so much. They maintain that women's naivete and their gullible, i.e., stupid natures, are exploited by advertisers for the purpose of increasing sales. One day, these men will get around to asking themselves who is really being exploited. Exactly. Yeah, because think about it. The advertising guys, the men, they're using propaganda and stuff like that to subliminal messages to get the women to buy a product. But remember, this is 1971. We are not talking about these women buying things with money they've earned. That wasn't the case back then. They were spending their husband's money. So you have advertising guys, companies getting women to spend the man's money. That's the thing. There's usually a man enabling the woman to hurt the other man. For example, family court. A lot of times you're going to have a man judge make a judgment, take that man's kids away, believe the woman, simp for the woman. And those are just enablers. And that's what Ms. Vilar is getting at right now. And it's an important topic because not all men are on the same page. Some of them are absolutely using women to exploit the other men. Oh, is it the creature whose innermost wishes are sought out, coddled, and fulfilled, or is it he who, in the desire to retain the affections of the woman, seeks out, coddles, and fulfills them? It has always been one of man's greatest aims in life to fulfill woman's innermost desires. In fact, to anticipate her every wish, as contemporary women's fiction still puts it. Yeah. That's why they expect it. They expect you to be mind readers. They expect you to just know what they want, when they want it, why they want it. They expect you to know. And if you don't know, well, you're going to get, you're gonna get a lot of headache because she's going to punish you for it, right? In the hopes that you won't do it again, which is just training. They have achieved their goal. There is practically no female desire left undiscovered, and probably very few which could not, if necessarily, be filled. Okay, I'm sorry. This sentence right here. There is practically no female desire left undiscovered. That's impossible because it's always growing. That's why you cannot make your wife happy. And a big reason is because we can't really make each other be happy. But also, if you do this to make her happy and she's like, and then you got to do more and more and more. We're like junkies that way. So you will never reach, it's infinite. We will continue to be, needing more gestures, and we will find where, we're just unsatisfied. And when we're unsatisfied, we're going to blame you. So you cannot, happy wife, happy life. I mean, you're constantly trying to fill up a vase that can never be filled. And that's what it's absolutely not. First of all, that's not your responsibility. You shouldn't have to do that. But, it's also impossible because it's just going to keep growing. Inevitably, like a junkie. The result is that women are getting increasingly more stupid while men grow more and more intelligent. Well, that was 1971. I can't really disagree with her. And I don't care how many people say, well, they have more degrees and they got more college. Are you kidding me? I will not equate that with education. Anybody can get into college. And pretty much anybody can get a degree nowadays. Have you seen street interviews where they ask college kids basic questions? They cannot answer. They're not educated. They're indoctrinated. I think that's the word they want to use. That's the word they're looking for. The gap between the sexes is widening constantly, making mutual understanding virtually impossible. But no one seems to notice. Yeah, they weren't noticing it. The overlords didn't want them to because the overlords knew we were in this free fall. And it led to where we are right now. And nobody's having babies and people aren't getting married and nuclear families are, abnormal. They didn't want people to notice because then people might go, hey, wait a second, I don't think this is a good thing. And by people, they didn't want men to notice. And they don't want men to notice now. That's why they talk about, red pill is awful. And, MGTOW is a hate group. And, they try to make it all like Andrew Tate. And there's so many here that are like, this does not represent. It's not the average man. How are you going to say that that's the average man? They try to vilify masculinity and call it toxic. And that is so that people will not look into it. Because they say we're over here being mean and hateful and all this stuff. It's not the case, not the case at all. But they say that so no one will look into it. And people will just say we're horrible and push us further to the edge. One of the basic principles of biology is that intelligence develops only in the face of competitive stimulation. Women, however, stand outside every competitive field. God, not anymore. They've pushed them in there since then, haven't they? Whew. Didn't work. It doesn't make us like men. That's the one thing that Esther doesn't seem to quite get is that we are very different, and it isn't a social construct. Like we are made to be different. It doesn't mean we're made to be what you find us to be these days, which is not so good. The glut of modern conveniences dulls their brains, reducing what little is left of their capacity for thought. Man, on the other hand, prodded by the need to create this comfort to open up new sources of income, has to exert himself more and more. Surrounded by this ever-increasing comfort, the female sex is changing for the worse. The concept of femininity used to be applied to a woman who had the ability to bear children. It was also applied to venality. The definition must be enlarged to include imbecility. All right. And isn't that interesting? I kind of got stuck on that part that femininity used to mean that you could bear children. They changed that. They changed what femininity is. They changed it to a costume. Trad wife, trad con, look at me. I'm dressed like a 1950s pinup girl in the kitchen, baking. No. Wow. If Marx is right and the... No. We're about to learn something about Ms. Vilar. Holy moly. If Marx is right and the word being determines the extent of man's being aware, the pill, for instance, would determine sexual mores, and the atom bombs would stalemate the ideologues of peace. So to the same extent, the self-awareness of Western woman whose situation in life has improved, basically over the last 20 years, is now in a state of acute transformation. This metamorphosis, which can only result in the utter stultification of women, is all the more dangerous because no one seems to have noticed it. You got to remember, this 1971, the birth control pill, came out in the late 60s, and that was monumentally changing of society, that you could take a pill that would prevent you from getting pregnant. So now you don't have that as a deterrent. Now you can just go and do the deed with whomever, right? Also, you can be married and do the deed and not have the responsibility of, oh, I'm going to bear children. And the fact that the whole of society was like, yes, we need a pill to stop this. I can't believe I'm at the stage where I'm like, yeah, that's wrong. I always thought these people who think birth control is wrong are just too extreme, blah, blah, blah. But they're not wrong. They're not wrong. It's unnatural to stop pregnancy when you've done the thing that creates a life. And I read an interesting sentence lately. I wish I could remember who it was attributed to. It might have just been a meme, actually. It said, Gen X is the first generation whose mothers took pills not to have us. Ouch. They took pills not to have us. Woman's image is no longer created by woman, but by advertising. That is, by man. And if anyone, wait, did I skip? So we were talking about Marx. Western woman. No, I didn't skip. Okay, sorry. Woman's image is no longer created by woman, but by advertising, that is, by man. And if anyone even starts to doubt the truth of woman's value, then there are 100 snappy advertising slogans ready to hand to disprove such a thought. Well, that's true. You can't say anything that would insinuate that a woman is doing something wrong. And they'll say, well, you're devaluing us, you're misogynistic. Advertising says that woman is witty, intelligent, creative, imaginative, warm-hearted, practical, and capable. And it's not just advertising, it's movies, it's television shows, it's everything that the system puts out there for everyone to see. And it's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. We are not all those things in the way that we are portrayed to be. Like independent. Independent. Smiling sweetly with all the airs of a goddess, she dispenses the latest discovery in instant drinks to her grateful brood. Her husband's eyes follow her adoringly as she serves up a new pre-cooked meal. Talking about an advertisement. Yeah. Her husband's looking on like, oh, that's wonderful. Meanwhile, it's like, here's some fish sticks. Chef Boyardee, all that kind of stuff. Her husband's eyes followed her adoringly as she serves up a new pre-cooked meal, which is so much more to his taste. Or maybe she hands him a Turkish towel, which is even softer than usual, a result of a new rinse. Yeah, the image of woman created by man in order to sell his goods is repeated incessantly with the help of mass media throughout the Western Hemisphere, and each day it is being reinforced. 53 years ago, you guys. So few people could see the Matrix back then. And we really didn't have a place to talk about it for those of us who did. I wasn't alive yet, but you know what I mean? No wonder they wanted to ban this woman. They wanted to silence her. They started a whole hate campaign against her. No wonder, because she's not just calling out women. It's not just about that. She's calling out the powers that be. She's calling out mass media. Not allowed to do that. How could anyone dare to admit, even to himself, that in reality, women are unimaginative, stupid, and insensitive? I would say, when compared to men, women can't compete with men. Women can't be men. We are different. We do have different qualities, but in the way she's meaning these terms, no, we're not that. It would obviously be too much to expect of women, and it is an admission men cannot afford. It's an admission men cannot afford, to admit that women aren't those things. Wow. Women buys, man sells. But one does not convince a customer by saying, it's good, you got to buy it. Instead, we say, you're marvelous, you deserve the best. Why should you make do with anything less? This is like the argument for hypergamy, too. You've earned your comfort, you are entitled to it. So on top of everything else, man has to flatter woman because he needs her as a customer. It is striking that the trick men are using here appears similar to the one used by women to train men. But sadly, it is not, since man turns it against himself. She praises him to get him to work for her, but he praises her to make her spend his money. If a man flatters and talks his neighbor's wife into buying new wall-to-wall carpeting for her living room, he must realize that this same neighbor will sell his own wife a bathtub the next day. How else could he pay for the carpeting? I've never thought about it like this. Never thought about advertising like this. But it's absolutely true. But we have to think of those men that are doing the selling and stuff. They're more on the side of the elites, because I fully believe that even in advertising, there's propaganda on purpose. I don't think it's just, well, we think this makes us sell more stuff. I think it does help them sell things, obviously, but I think there's more to it than that. Man is caught in a trap of his own making. While outside While outside, the struggle for money is becoming fiercer and fiercer. At home, his wife is growing more moronic. And from day to day, his house fills up with more junk and knickknacks, thereby financing the stultification of her husband's competitors' wives. Huh? Yeah. I mean, these women go to Target and buy like whatever. They go to TJ Maxx and just buy all kinds of crap. For what? Why? Men who, in fact, prefer the plain and functional every day find themselves more deeply entangled in the undergrowth of superfluous ornamentation and all kinds of embellishments. Live, laugh, love. In their living rooms, the porcelain cats, bar stools, glass top tables, candelabra, and silk cushions pile up. In their bedrooms, the walls are papered with floral patterns. In their cabinets, a dozen different kinds of glasses are lined up, and if they look for a place to put their razors in the bathroom, all the shelves are filled with 1,000 creams and cosmetics of their artfully made up wives. I've been in these houses. They're literally describing a particular house I was in that I lived at. I'm like, what? And now I'm like looking in my room. Like I did rearrange. That's a Norman Rockwell that was already up, and I moved it. I do have my cross in my little menagerie there, and I've got like a trophy picture of my mom. That was a gift. The blanket was a gift. I'm like, goodness gracious, I don't want to be I don't want to be like that. Part of the reason I started studying all this stuff is that I wanted to be better. I realized that I'd been lied to, and I wanted to know, what they lied to me about, and how I came to believe it. And I saw how many other women have fallen for this and just been used, you know, uh, for, basically Satan's purposes. For the state's purposes, if you don't want to look at it that way. The overlords, like, we are helping advance the overlords, taking the men out of it so they don't have pushback. Wow. Yeah. Men don't like that. Men don't need much at all. They're simple. They don't need all these like things and trinkets and whatever. That looks like chaos to them. And the thing is, when these women fill up their houses, live, laugh, love, and like they're gonna decorate like Joanna Gaines or whatever, do they ever ask their husbands if they liked it or what they wanted? And would their husbands even be able to say, or would they be like, whatever you want, honey, blah, blah, blah? Because they don't want to be yelled at. Whew. It is interesting that nearly the only products sold are those of benefit to women. Sports cars, with which to entice her, luxury goods for women, or household appliances, also for women, since the house actually belongs to her. Man is, in fact, a homeless creature, moving constantly between office and house. It's heartbreaking. Women would be delighted to buy things for their husbands for whatever occasion, using the latter's money, of course, right? On Christmas, husband's like, I just show up and I'm as surprised as everyone else at what I gave people. Because she just goes and she spends whatever on presents for everybody, doesn't ask him. And it's like he's a hostage in this situation. And so she gets him presents. But it's weird because, like, how do you get somebody presents with their own money? That's so weird. Why don't we talk about stuff like that? How come everybody just goes along with it and nobody says, hey, this is really weird. Why do we do this way? Just robots. Oh my gosh. They give ties, sports shirts, ashtrays, wallets as often as possible. The problem is that a man needs so very little. His clothing is standardized, hence inexpensive. His consumption of food and drink is restricted in case it affects his work capacity, and he has no time to consume other goods except cigarettes, which he smokes at work. It's a different time for sure. Wow. Yeah. Industry has made every effort to get men interested in aftershave lotions, hairsprays, or gaily colored leisure wear, but usually in vain. Only young men will take to the what? Only young men will take to the latest short-lived fashion. Their earning potential, however, is too low to interest women. Right. That's when women weren't interested in young men. Now, they want young men, but they want young men to be able to spoil them. Young men haven't made enough money yet. It's a conundrum for these women. Rich men, whom women love anyway, and artists who act as a kind of court jester to them, are allowed to sport the latest in clothes, and homosexuals, maybe, but not the average man. Yeah. Although I would say that's changing. There are more men that have been raised by single mothers and by women who are still married, but have kind of taken over the whole role of, the disciplinarian, the person who sets the tone and does the teaching of the children all the way up, trying to do it through adulthood. But it doesn't seem that most women can get a child from child to full adulthood, understanding consequences, accountability, stuff like that. That's why you see, I think, a lot of people in their 20s that you're like, they're still a kid. You gotta have a real father. You can't just have a dad. You gotta have a father. Another example is of this is Father's Day. Oh boy, I bet. Which is still not very popular in spite of all the advertising. Whereas Mother's Day is a bonanza for everyone concerned. Same thing now. Can't believe it was like that 53 years ago. The best thing men can do on their day of celebration is retire to a bar and have a few beers in peace. Wow. Apart from eating, drinking, and smoking, sex is the only activity where a man is an independent consumer. He must be able to satisfy his bedroom fun urge. No wonder whole branches of industry are given over to this trade, taking advantage of this need to make him even more lustful and to persuade him to buy goods which merely serve to increase his desire. Yeah, it's not good to do that to men, to make it more difficult for them to have discipline over themselves. Satisfaction, of course, is another matter that has to be had from a woman in the customary price, at the customary price. As such firms are usually run by men, in order to make a living, a man finds himself in the embarrassing position of having to make lectures of his fellow males. He caters to male desire for women in every conceivable way and proceeds much like Alexander Pavlov and his dog, establishing conditioned reflexes. Pavlov made his dog's mouth water merely by ringing a bell, which meant dinner. In this case, man encourages his fellow man to get excited. Okay, man encourages fellow man to get physically excited by producing photos of half-naked breasts by means of a suggestive sigh in a popular song, perhaps, or by writing a certain sentence in a book. What about the movies, Miss Vilar? That is why man will invent a whole range of methods of obtaining physical excitement, which another man will have to pay for. Yeah. And of course, this mechanism does not bring returns only to manufacturers of erotica. All other industries take advantage of it too. Present Presents for women are sold to men by means of a picture of an attractive female bosom. A man will read a book or see a movie because he hopes it will give him a kick. Right. And as a secondary effect, he may suddenly feel the desire to go around the world with his woman, to buy a weekend cottage in the mountains, or to get a sports car. Wow, they really trap your minds. The overlords use women to trap your minds and try to direct your behavior. The women are a tool in this. I am not saying we are innocent, but we are definitely a tool by the overlords to control you, to own you, to fleece you. And I don't hear the rest of the red pill community talking about this. I get it. Family court is a problem. Dating is a nightmare. I get all that. Parental alienation is horrible. But can we please see who really benefits? Women are not benefiting from this. They think they are, but there's going to be a whole group of women coming of age here that are going to be, 50, 60, no kids, totally alone. They're going to be looking at being elderly without anybody but themselves to look after them. It's about to get very real. Oh my gosh. The American men's magazine Playboy provides us with one of the best proofs of man's methods of self-conditioning. Sandwiched between wonderful pairs of naked breasts are excellent articles of a highly theoretical nature to entertain him and to offer him respite between physical excitement. All of this is padded with offers of expensive cars, liquor, unnecessary clothing, and cigarettes. Degeneracy. All degeneracy. And remember, they'd be like, I read it for the articles. God. A little bit of poison is still poison. Okay. If I give you a glass of water and I'm like, oh, I'll only put a drop of deadly poison in it. That's not a glass of water anymore. That's poison. And so you can have good articles or whatever. But if it's poison, it's poison. And degeneracy, trying to get men to choose degeneracy, which it seems that they are trying to get men to choose degeneracy. And when men choose degeneracy, you know who they're not choosing? Not the dog, God. I know that I can make videos that say other things or just criticize women or, be like Emily King and put a little dance in there. That's not the substance I want to bring. And if we have fewer views or fewer subscribers, fair enough. And if I forget all the time because I try to remember to ask you guys to like it when my dog distracts me, if I forget to ask for subscriptions or ask for, people to like the video, it's because I want to give you the whole picture, right? I think truth is important. And I think, fighting back and forth and bickering back and forth, although we may be in the right and we may be accurate, I think there's a bigger truth to know. And there's a real enemy that's out of sight. And we are focusing on the women, and we're not wrong. We're just not all the way accurate. Oh. All right, where were we? Naked breasts? Okay. Respite between physical, whatever. All of this is padded with offers of expensive cars. We did that, and all the degeneracy. Women are highly offended by magazines like these. But men have lost all sense of the grotesque in this situation. the cult of the bosom has become something quite independent and depersonalized. The sex industry has told men so often and so successfully that women's breasts are there to attract him that he has quite forgotten their real purpose. Yes, our whole society has. The diversion was entirely successful as a result of the invention of substitutes for mother's milk. He rarely has a chance to watch a baby feed at its mother's breast, right? They've totally repurposed the actual purpose for that. They've totally sexualized the chest. They've totally sexualized it, and they use it to manipulate you. So the men are getting it, from the overlords up here, the state, mass media, all the people that want to shape culture, and they're getting it from the women. You're getting squeezed. And you guys can feel it. I know you can feel it. But you might not have realized exactly where it's coming from. It's trying to pull you away from God. It's trying to pull you away from the truth. It's trying to pull you away from being moral and pulling you into degeneracy, which is very empty and horrible place to be. It does not fulfill you. It's like Pleasure Island. It's just a bunch of shiny things that will leave you feeling awful. And this is why we have such an epidemic of the self-deletion stuff, because it causes you to be nihilistic. Degeneracy leads to nihilism, and probably the other way around. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I certainly gained a lot from it. Reading what she was saying, you can always see a little bit more of the matrix, right? It can always become clearer. But I hope that it hasn't disrupted your peace. I hope that you are even more determined to protect your peace. And I hope that you need to feed your soul. I love you guys. I'll see you on the next one.